You've got the big one, and then you have the biggest one in NASCAR history, plus the most overtimes in a single NASCAR season. Add on to that another playoff upset. Let's talk about it all. Hey everyone, my name's Taylor Kitchen and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line, the show where we do motorsports media your way, talking about NASCAR all the time. And we're talking about Talladega, the Yellowwood 500 for the second race in the round of 12. And like I said, there was a lot of historical numbers in these playoffs, starting off with an overtime finish, the 13th of the season, the most in a single NASCAR season. And this overtime restart was because we had a wreck with only a few laps to go in the race. This happened after the lapped car of Todd Gilliland, who was caught speeding on pit road, caught up to the pack. He was on the inside of the field. It disrupted the bottom line. They all kind of stacked up, and then all of a sudden, you had a really big push from Brad Keselowski to the 2 of Austin Cindric, who was leading that bottom line. Unfortunately, that turned Cindric, and the rest of the field followed suit. And when I say the rest of the field, I literally mean, quite honestly, the rest of the field. There were 28 cars involved, the most involved in a single incident in NASCAR Cup Series history. For Austin Cindric, going into the round of 12, I didn't think he'd make it past the round of 12 to the round of 8, but I thought Talladega was his one shot, leading 29 laps for the duration of the race. He looked like it was going to be smooth sailing, a playoff upset in the sense that we have a car like Austin Cindric, who we didn't think would make it that far, making it into the round of 8 off of a win at Talladega. We also know at Talladega, it's not over until it's over, so unfortunate to have him lead so many laps and see Penske be so strong. All cars, though, unfortunately taken out during this race, 2 involved in that late race incident, and then 1 with Ryan Blaney involved in an incident to end stage 2. We'll talk about the rest of the playoff drivers in a little bit, but let's get to this overtime finish where we saw a 3-wide finish between Byron Keselowski and Stenhouse. And at the end of the day, it was the 2023 Daytona 500 winner playing playoff spoiler, the second playoff spoiler in the round of 12 and the third in the 2024 playoffs. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. gets the win at Talladega. And we shouldn't be surprised. He led 19 laps. He got stage points in stage 1. He's so good at these tracks, so you can never count him out. It was awesome to see him get the win. And of course, paying tribute to those that were impacted by Hurricane Helene in the western part of North Carolina. But a really big win for that 47 team. So congrats to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So at the line, how it shook out, we have Brad Keselowski finishing in second, really close to getting that win there. Just needed a better push from Kyle Larson, needed to capitalize on the push that Larson did give him. In third, you have William Byron, who made it 3 wide coming to the line. Here's a stat that will shock you. Kyle Larson finishing in 4th. This is his first top 10 finish at a drafting style track since Talladega in 2022. This guy has needed good luck at these types of tracks, and luckily he got it, missing the big one for the most part and any other incident during the day. So well done by that 5 team. He needed a good race following how they started this round. Speaking of somebody who has desperately needed a top 10 finish at a drafting style track, Erik Jones, believe it or not, this is his second top 10 of the season, coming after the very first race of the year, the Daytona 500. Legacy Motor Club has had the worst luck this year. John Henry Nemechek has seemed to step it up just a little bit, but for Erik Jones, it's been a lot of what could have been, so really glad to see that 43 car in the top 5. You have Christopher Bell in that 6th position. He had to start the race at the back of the pack due to an unapproved adjustment, so really good fight from that 20 team. Then right behind him, you have Justin Haley. As a reminder, again, he switched rides with Corey LaJoie, so finishing in that position for the Spire number 7 team. 8th, Austin Dillon. 9th, Bubba Wallace. And 10th, Denny Hamlin. Speaking of guys that needed top 10s, Denny Hamlin, of course, did not have a good start to the playoffs at Atlanta, played it way too safe, and ultimately it did not pay off. He needed a good points day, or at least a good finish to one of these races, and fortunately got it here at Talladega, one of only 4 playoff drivers to finish this race inside the top 10. And speaking of that, let's look at the rest of the playoff drivers and how they finished this race. We have Alex Bowman in that 16th position, Tyler Reddick finishing in 20th. Then we have Daniel Suarez in 26th, and before the race even began, he was going to have a rough time, and we knew this because he had to serve a pass-through penalty, and he had to start the race to the back of the pack, and the car chief was ejected due to NASCAR finding unapproved adjustments to that 99 car to the roof of the car after inspection. And things went from bad to worse when the 99 tried to stay on the lead lap, trying to block those front cars in that line, barreling towards him. We've seen this move be successful before. In this case, though, it was not. Daniel Suarez went to the middle of the pack. Cars tried to swerve around him, and when he tried to find an open spot right in front of BJ McLeod's car on that top line, that spot closed in way too quickly with McLeod just having too much momentum. He made contact with the 99. The 99 went barreling down the track and just barely missed the 24 of William Byron. He got very lucky there with Daniel Suarez basically having a single car incident with BJ McLeod getting just some nose damage there. But Suarez managed to finish ahead of some other playoff drivers. Chase Elliott, involved in the big one, finished 29th. Briscoe, 30th. Cindric did not finish this race in 32nd. Logano, 33rd. And Ryan Blaney, yet again, was caught up in an earlier incident, finished this race in 39th. And for Ryan Blaney, it was a wreck at the end of stage 2 with an aggressive push from Alex Bowman in the tri-oval that cost him his race. He said that Alex Bowman really just drove through him, so very frustrating there. It's the end of the stage. Everyone's going for stage points, so it's a frustrating deal, but ultimately a racing incident. On a positive, though, he did cross the line spinning out before the yellow flag came out, so we did get points for that stage, finishing that stage in 8th. So what could have been a bad day for Blaney was ultimately turned okay by getting those stage points. And of course, with all those playoff drivers caught up in that big incident towards the end, the points ultimately worked in Ryan Blaney's favor. And I want to go back to the big one real quick with a record of 28 cars involved, because what happened after that was confusing to a lot of people. Hence, let's revisit the DVP rule. We remember a frustrated Josh Berry and Rodney Childers after the Kansas race saying they just needed 4 tires to be able to continue the race. And NASCAR instead put them back into the garage because of the DVP rule. We saw frustrated Ryan Blaney at Watkins Glen saying, I think we could have made changes to the car to where we could have been good to go for the rest of the race. They were taken back to the garage. At Talladega, NASCAR notably towed 2 big names back to pit road to make changes to their car due to damage they sustained in that big wreck. We have the 9 of Chase Elliott and the 14 of Chase Briscoe. The 14 and the 9 made the changes they were able to make in their pit stalls, were able to make minimum speed and get back on track. However, why are we seeing those 2 cars able to make those changes this race when we've had instances in the past few races where cars maybe arguably had less damage? If you look at the number 9 car, it's pretty damaged. And those cars weren't able to return to the track. Well, Elton Sawyer spoke to the media after the race to address this amongst many concerns from Talladega. Admittedly, Elton Sawyer said they could have handled Josh Berry's situation differently after the race, saying it was overall a decent car that just needed some fresh tires. So going into Talladega, they wanted to err on the side of the competition, on the side of the drivers. And with the situation in turn 3 with over 25 cars involved, it was hard for them to determine what cars were okay to continue and which cars weren't. So going into this race 1, NASCAR had to make an adjustment, or felt they wanted to make the adjustment to make things more fair. But then we have a hefty amount of cars involved in a wreck, and NASCAR is now having to decide which cars are good to go and which ones aren't in a very short amount of time. Elton Sawyer ultimately feels like allowing the 14 and 9 to go to pit road was the right call. They feel like the calls they made beforehand, specifically with Blaney, was the right call. They learned from Josh Berry. But at the end of the day, they do feel like the DVP rule has served its purpose with the Gen 7 car. Along the way, they're going to have to adjust. Like I said last week, NASCAR will look at this rule during the offseason and make the necessary adjustments they need to make. And I appreciate NASCAR adjusting along the way. What I think is frustrating is that adjustment has cost potentially Josh Berry and Ryan Blaney, who is in the playoffs, a chance to fix their cars to get vital points that they need to end their season on the right note. Again, for Ryan Blaney, that could maybe have cost him a championship. For Josh Berry, it's still him fighting for a decent point standings at the end of the day. Looking at the positives from NASCAR side of things, though, they did make some pretty vital changes to these cars to keep them on the ground, the aero changes going into the weekend. So that is a very big positive. But again, when we adjust the rules as we go along to make things more fair, you're also hurting the competition who had to go by the rules that were previous. For say like Ryan Blaney, again, these rule changes and these slight adjustments, though I think that's a positive step in the right direction, doing them at such a vital time in the season is going to hurt the point standings at the end of the day. Speaking of the points, let's look at the point standings following Talladega after this race. William Byron locks himself officially into the round of 8 on points alone, a very big deal for that driver. He can breathe easy going into the Roval. Then you have drivers below the cutoff line, Joey Logano minus 13, and remember that even numbered year rule. I don't know how this is going to play out. Going minus 13 into the Roval is a little shaky, so we'll have to see how this plays out for the number 22. Then you have Suarez minus 20, Cindric minus 29, and Briscoe minus 32 in a must-win situation right there. And I mentioned Ryan Blaney getting caught up in that incident early, but benefited by other playoff contenders getting caught up in the big one. He's plus 25 to the good over that cutoff line, and Denny Hamlin for a while was not looking good on the points. He sat below that cutoff line for a lot of the race at Talladega. He is plus 26, so it pays to stay in the race if you're able to avoid the big ones. So a good break for Denny Hamlin at the end of the day. Finally, let's rate this race above or below the yellow line. When I think of super speedway racing and what we've been missing this season, this race was it for me. We had four wide racing to the line for some stages. We had a 3-wide finish, and we were 4 wide for so much of stage 1. I was questioning if we were still in stage 1 or if it was the last stage of the race. The show that these drivers put on was so refreshing. I didn't feel like we were saving fuel for the entire run of the race. It is how super speedway racing should be. Obviously, do I wish there was less carnage? Yes, 28 cars getting caught up in a wreck at the end is insane, all things considered. But this was a refreshing take on super speedway racing. Even too, I think it was Jeff Gluck that posted on Twitter saying that a big crew chief approached him and a group of journalists that were talking, saying, hey, we have a group of cars that are going to try to push the field so where we're not saving fuel. And whether that was true or not, or whatever played out, it seemed like it might have worked because, again, we didn't save fuel for a majority of the race. I know sometimes with how the cautions fell, it helped, but I felt like the field was actually pushing itself to have an actual race, which was so lovely to see. For those reasons, I'm going to give this race at Talladega an 85%, which is absolutely above the yellow line. A very refreshing take on super speedway racing. So what did you think of the Yellowwood 500? Let me know in the comments below, and that's going to end this episode of Above the Yellow Line. Of course, for more NASCAR news, make sure to go to TobyChristie.com, and to hear more about us and what we're doing and our creative content, go to AboveTheYellowLine.com and get your exclusive ATYL merch. We have merchandise that we're selling for the month of October. It's Dysautonomia Awareness Month. It's an illness that impacts me and several others around the world. We have exclusive merch where all the proceeds are going to go towards an organization called Dysautonomia International. They are the leading organization in research for dysautonomia. To learn more about that, more about how you can help out that organization, make sure to click the link in my bio, and to get that merchandise, of course, go to AboveTheYellowLine.com. But that does it here from me at Above the Yellow Line. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like it, share the video, subscribe, share this with your friends and family, and until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.